Breaking news out of Saudi Arabia, where Fox's Brett Baier just sat down with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who tells Brett that Iran getting a nuclear weapon would be, quote, a bad move, with the potential to start a war, quote, with the rest of the world. Here's an exclusive bit from this interview with Mohammed bin Salman, airing tonight on Special Report. Watch.
Are you concerned, though, Iran gets a nuclear weapon, about them getting a nuclear weapon?
Well, we are concerned of any country getting a nuclear weapon. That's a bad move, and you don't need to get a nuclear weapon because you cannot use it. Even if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, any country use a nuclear weapon, that means they are having a war with the rest of the world. The world cannot see another Hiroshima. If the world see 100,000 people dead, that means you are in a war with the rest of the world. So it's a useless effort to reach a nuclear weapon because you cannot use it. If you use it, you got to have a big fight with the rest of the world.
If they get one, will you?
If they get one, we have to get one.
Fascinating. Special report anchor Brett Baier joins us now from Saudi Arabia. Brett, good to have you with us. Fascinating interview, and that is just the beginning.
Martha, good afternoon, your time. It is really fascinating. There are historic moments in this interview. First of all, it's the first interview that His Royal Highness the Saudi Crown Prince has ever done in all English. He answers every question that I bring to the table in an hour-long interview, both a sit-down and a walk-and-talk portion. We talk about everything, including his vision here. I'm on the Red Sea in the island of Sindala, the first project in the Neom project. They're building all kinds of things, trying to bring tourists in. They answer the questions, he answers them, about human rights and 9/11 and Jamal Khashoggi, about the world and all the leaders he talks to, about the U.S. relationship. And take a listen to this about the negotiations for normalization with Israel.
What would it take for you to agree to normalize relations with Israel?
Well, there is approach from President Biden administration to get to that point. For us, the Palestinian issue is very important. We need to solve that part, and we have a good negotiations continue. Till now, we gotta see where it will go. We hope that it will reach a place that it will ease the life of the Palestinians and get Israel back, as a player in Middle East.
There were reports that you had suspended talks.
No, that's not true.
Not true. So you think, if you were to characterize it, are you close?
Every day we get closer.
That is significant, and that will have major repercussions around the Middle East. There was a report the other day that the talks had been suspended between Saudi Arabia and Israel. This is a big deal, and it comes after this G20 deal for a rail and port system with a number of countries signing on that really will change the face about how things move here in the Middle East, and the U.S. is a part of that. We talk about the relationship with the U.S. We talk about President Biden, and he essentially goes around the world with all the leaders weighing in at all the different hotspots. I am telling you, I've done a lot of interviews in my life. I have never had this much news in one interview at the same time.
Wow. Well, we look forward to seeing it tonight. And, you know, there's also been interesting moves with China and Saudi Arabia. And I look forward to hearing more about that as he, sort of takes us around, because the dynamic with Saudi Arabia and where their shift is, where the gravitas is in terms of their relationships with others is hugely important. With regard to President Biden, Brett, he called MBS a pariah after the Khashoggi murder and the investigation that was done here in the United States. Did you get any sense that that relationship is thawing?
I asked that specific question. First of all, I asked a number of questions about Jamal Khashoggi and the fallout from it. But in the follow-up to that, I asked about the relationship, and you're looking at the fist bump. I asked about the pariah statement, and then the fist bump visit with a closed fist, and then the recent G20 visit where he was open palm saying thank you for your leadership, and how that has changed since that in the past 5 years. Remember, we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the Jamal Khashoggi killing. He essentially said that we have so many ties with the U.S. economically, in what they do around the world, that it is bigger than one administration. He says the relationship with President Biden is good. He has good back and forth, and that they are being helpful on the Israel negotiations. He is very, very forthcoming and blunt. And I'm telling you that, you talk to a lot of officials who tiptoe around things because of sensitivities. This is a very matter-of-fact answer to a lot of tough, difficult, complex questions that you're really not going to believe.
It's fascinating. And, I want to play this from Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, talking about this peace process being within reach at a bilat today around the UN meetings. Watch this.
I think that under your leadership, Mr. President, we can forge a historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think such a peace would go a long way, first, to advance the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict, achieve reconciliation between the Islamic world and the Jewish state, and advance a genuine peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
This is so intriguing, Brett. The language from the Crown Prince and from Netanyahu. But of course, the big question is the one that the Crown Prince brings up. And that is that the Palestinian issue is very important to the Saudis. So did any sense of what some kind of agreement might look like?
He didn't want to go into specifics. I did press him a couple different times. I did ask him, can you make a deal with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? He's 73, you're 38. He essentially said, yes, I can, but the stipulations have to be right. And his concern for the Palestinians particularly is significant. He wouldn't go into details because, like many world leaders, they don't want to negotiate on television. But I'm telling you, he shows in our business, we say, a lot of leg as far as answers. He does. And around the world, there are major things, major messages. And the shift in this country, he talks about significantly, the transformation that he is trying to see and how Saudi Arabia is perceived, as well as dealing with the controversies in the past.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the changes that have been made there in Saudi Arabia in just recent years in terms of freedoms for women are extraordinary. They can, do things we take for granted, like going to a sports stadium and driving a car. And with some regulations, they can start businesses and all of those things, Brett. So I look forward to hearing what he has to say about that. I'm also, of course, curious, and I know our viewers will be as well, about the energy situation. It feels like every time the White House and the Biden administration have tried to get cooperation from Saudi Arabia in terms of opening up the spigots a little bit, while price pressures have been really onerous for Americans, they really haven't gotten much love back on any of that.
Yeah, he specifically asked him that about oil production cuts, the most recent one. And he says that has nothing to do with any other country. He says it doesn't have to do with American politics. It doesn't have to do with Russia and Ukraine. It has to do with our sense of where we see the oil market and stability long term. He was pretty specific. This is a data guy. He confirmed that he is a computer gamer. That's how he blows off steam. He likes to play computer games. He is in every detail. And he is very well aware of where Saudi Arabia is positioned around the world and clearly wants to step up more as a world leader in a number of different venues.
Yeah, obviously there's just so much to discuss with him, and he is this new generation of leadership. We all remember when he first came to his level of power there were a lot of leadership that was basically, held hostage in a hotel in Saudi Arabia. He really wanted to shake up what he saw as the corruption in the country. I'm curious what his, thoughts are on how all of that looks now.
Yeah, and I specifically asked about the past and what has happened, even things most recently, an Associated Press piece about a man that posted criticism on Twitter, or now X, who was sentenced to die. And he said yes, and there are things about our laws that need to be changed. He was very introspective. He said mistakes have been made. This is a country, as I said, in transition. Religious conservatives obviously ran the show for a long time. Radical Islam was a problem. He's been trying to root that out, but he acknowledges there are still problems in the kingdom. Sorry, it's a really windy night here on the Red Sea in Sandala. There's a wonderful golf course that's being built behind me, Robert Trent Jones Jr. I hope to play it someday, but it's quite amazing to see the transition here. But we really talk about a lot on a lot of different issues, and I think even his staff was surprised how blunt he was.
Yeah, it's refreshing to get blunt answers. I'm going to squeeze in one more before I let you go on that windy night. The Abraham Accords, obviously, there was a lot of progress that was made under the Trump administration with reopening relations between Israel and some of those countries, in some of the Arab countries. And there was a feeling at that point that it was close in terms of Saudi Arabia and Israel. And you touched on that in your first answer from him. Did he give you any sense of the difference between dealing with the Trump White House and the Biden White House?
Yeah, I mean, he talked a little bit about that. I actually asked him about Jared Kushner. I asked him about investments that the Saudis have made. Listen, we talked about a lot. He says that it's from administration to administration, he's still dealing with America. It is frustrating as a country dealing with changing foreign policy, he said, every 4 to 8 years, but we deal with it because we are one-minded. He said we are, focused on our goals. And by the way, Martha, those goals keep shifting because he is putting a lot of pressure on all these ministers of different places, tourism, sports, music, all these different ministers, energy, and they're giving them specific data goals. They're hitting them and then setting new goals. So his Vision 2030 he talks about, and I ask him about what Saudi Arabia is going to look like in 2040 and 2050. It's fascinating, and I guarantee you that this leader, despite all the criticism and controversy, is going to be around in the Middle East for a long, long time.
Fascinating power player. And just to tease forward, I know you also asked him some questions that will be of interest to the 9/11 families as well. Brett, we will be watching every minute of this on Special Report. Great.